Hello there, my name is Matthew Miller, and I just finished watching the brand new episode of Doctor Who, Into the Dalek with Peter Capaldi, and all I gotta say is, oh my god, that was a great episode. What I really liked about this episode of Doctor Who is that it harkened back to an older style of Doctor Who. That old classic style that, it's when you look at the Doctor, it's a bit more menacing. There's a little bit of menace to Peter Capaldi's Doctor. It sort of feels like back when William Hartnell was the Doctor. And one of the things that I really liked about it was that it even mentioned the first ever Dalek episode, The Daleks with William Hartnell. The significance of that is that it showed that the Daleks were sort of the mirror to the Doctor. And that it developed right from that first meeting. The Doctor was someone different before he met the Daleks. It was with the Daleks that he actually began helping other people, and he became the Time Lord that we appreciate today. William Hartnell's Doctor was very selfish, self-centered, and the only thing that he cared about beyond himself and his own personal safety was his granddaughter, Susan. It was when he developed a relationship with the Thaws, the other group of people on Skaro, that he actually began to have an active hand in sort of shaping the way things went wherever he gone. And so that was one thing that I really appreciated about this episode. When Peter Capaldi did that sort of Vulcan mind melt thing with the Dalek, it sort of showed that. And the Dalek sort of looked inside the Doctor and saw this darkness that was created from this back and forth over and over again with the Daleks, starting with that very first story with this iconic creature. Now, this was the episode of Doctor Who that I was waiting for. This was such an excellent episode. Recently, I did a list of my top 5 favorite Dalek stories, and after watching Into the Dalek, I have to say that I might have to reevaluate that list because this episode was so good. What this episode did was it sort of had that dichotomy where the heroes in fiction tend to be defined by their most famous enemies. When you look at Sherlock Holmes, he's defined by Moriarty. When you look at Batman, he's defined by the Joker. When you look at Superman, he's defined by Lex Luthor. When you look at Spider-Man, he's defined by the Green Goblin. And so you have these sort of two iconic forces that are going against each other. And that's what this episode of Doctor Who felt like to me. It was that incredible, and it was that epic, even if it's in such a confined space, and the Doctor was shrunk small to fit inside this Dalek. It still had that sense of epicness, and that final confrontation between that Dalek, Rusty, and the Doctor himself. You sort of saw that sort of coalescing into this final moment. And one of the most interesting things about it is when the Dalek looked inside the Doctor. When Rusty looked inside the Doctor, what this Dalek saw was the Doctor's darkness. He saw that hatred he had towards the Daleks. And that is something that was sort of missing with some of the previous stories of late. You saw that with Dalek, with Christopher Eccleston's episode against that one Dalek that was chained up. But this was on a totally different level. This was incredible. Some other things that I really liked was how there was this reference to the movie Fantastic Voyage, where people were shrunk small and traveled through a human body. And so there was a homage to that, and that was sort of fun. Some of you may be too young to remember that movie. In fact, that was a movie that was well before my time. Another thing I sort of liked was how this new character, this new companion, Danny Pink, was introduced. And it was already told that he was going to be a companion a while back, so I look forward to seeing him. I sort of like how he had this sort of post-traumatic stress disorder thing going on with some of those student questions. You know, especially, have you killed anyone that wasn't a soldier? And then, he shed a tear. And, being former military, that sort of struck a chord. So far, 2 episodes into Peter Capaldi's run as the Doctor, and I have to say that Into the Dalek was much better than the first episode, Deep Breath. Deep Breath was an okay episode, but usually when new Doctors come into the story, those first stories tend to be a bit sluggish or a bit choppy. There's a little bit of wonkiness to it because the characters aren't entirely developed yet. And a lot of it is trying to stumble through, trying to find that path. Now with this one, Peter Capaldi's Doctor is beginning to find that path, and we see what sort of person he is. When that one soldier was killed by the Dalek antibodies, that was an interesting moment for the Doctor. It defined how this Doctor was. Now, when he basically let that guy die, he told everyone it wasn't about saving him, it's about saving us. And that was a very brutal, cold, calculating sort of Doctor. And that reminds me of both William Hartnell's Doctor and Sylvester McCoy's Doctor. Although with Sylvester McCoy's Doctor, you had this sort of jovial exterior, so that cold, calculating, manipulative sort of Doctor was sort of hidden. Now this, it's right out in the open. It's right in your face. And that is something that we haven't seen for a long time. And that should make things interesting for upcoming episodes. I especially liked when they went into that food shoot and he said, well, do you want to say goodbye to him? He's right here. He's probably on the top layer. Like, ugh. So that is something that I'm looking forward to being further developed in future stories, and hopefully, it'll just get better from here. It's hard to top an episode like this because I think this one is going to be an instant classic. Like I said, this is already probably going to be in my top 5 Dalek episodes. It's just trying to figure out where it's going to fit. It's been a long time since the Daleks actually felt menacing to me. And with this one, the Dalek felt menacing. When the monster looks inside of you and sees that darkness, that's crazy. It's sort of like that Nietzsche quote. When you look into the abyss looks into you. And that is what this one episode is about. Darkness looking into darkness. And they see reflections of each other. So much so that it is almost like that they are looking at the same thing. Because that's what a reflection is. It's the same thing in reverse. But just because something is reversed, it doesn't make it good or evil. It just makes it different. And that is what that question about. Clara, do you think I'm a good man? And when Clara answered, I don't know. It was the first time that question was posed to us in such a long time. Because for those of us who've seen Doctor Who from the first Doctor, know that the Doctor wasn't always a good man. And who knows, maybe a lot of these future selves were just masks to hide that. But at the end, Clara said, I don't know, but I think you try to be. And maybe that's what is important, is trying to be better. trying to be good. And that's something that should not be scoffed at. And hopefully this is something that will be explored further as this season goes on. And I am so excited for it. It is such a refreshing change of pace that I think a lot of old-time fans of Doctor Who will enjoy. And hopefully a lot of these new Who fans will jump along for this ride, because this is an interesting combination of both old and new, and it's asking questions that wasn't really asked before, and hopefully it just keep on going along this path. So I guess that's all I have to say about this episode, other than I really enjoyed it. And take care, have fun.